Welcome back to 7,000 Volts, Living an Electrified Life. Sorry we missed you guys for a week. We had a hurricane here in Florida. That's what happens, hurricane. Debbie came through and she caused a little bit of chaos. But we're back and we're going to talk about connections. No greater person to be connected to than the person that's here today. My dear friend, Patrick Helm.
Good
How
morning.
you doing today,
I'm
sir?
doing great, LJ. How are you?
I'm doing wonderful.
Excellent.
I'm doing wonderful. It's, we've been knowing each other for many, many years.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm very grateful to be connected to you.
Likewise.
It goes, having the right connections, it means a lot. Because if you have the bad connections, it's going to mean a lot.
Yeah.
And it predicts this. There's a saying, show me your friends, I'll show you your future.
That's right.
So when you connect it, number one, to the source, the foundation, the creator of this earth, that's the best connection you can have.
Amen.
And he's going to surround you with other connections.
Amen.
Your story always interested me. I don't want to tell your story for you. And I would like you to share with the audience and just share your story, because somebody needs to hear your story, because it's very powerful.
Sure.
It's very impactful. It's inspired me over the years and helped shape me to who I am today.
Wow. That's a lot, LJ. It's a lot to follow. Born and raised here in Pinellas County, and certainly from a very humble family. My mom was divorced with 5 of us, so I think that's how the story really starts. It really begins there, just learning some of those life lessons from my mom and from how she raised us 5 kids. Growing up, it was inspiring to me also to have family connections, and I think all of us have family connections, but for some of those ones that just really are embedded, for me, that definitely was my grandfather. So all of which have gone home to be with the Lord. But as I entered into the workforce, if you will, I had a lot of connections that come across my life. Low self-esteem, didn't think I was worthy enough of doing anything. And I started with a company at an entry level. It was an entry level position, and I worked for that company for a couple years. But in those 2 years, started in 1986. In those 2 years, there was so many that had invested in me. You talk about make the right connection. I believe that the good Lord puts people in our lives as conduits. Right?
Absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
so there were so many that had made the right connection, but still, this is a kid that had low self-esteem. So I worked for that company for about 2 years in high school. And when I got ready to graduate high school, I enlisted into the military.
Okay.
And unbeknownst to me, the folks in this company were watching me. And they didn't want me to go into the military because they wanted me to start, they wanted me to remain with that company.
Yes.
But they were so set on kind of keeping me around that they said, if you leave, we want you to take military leave so that you're still employed with the company while you're gone.
Okay.
Even if it's 3 years or 4 years or whatever, you will still be employed with the company while you're gone. But if you come back and you don't find any work in the private sector, you can come back to work.
Okay.
And my intentions were, I didn't know. Right? That was my intentions.
Yes.
I didn't have any, again, going back to that low self-esteem. I left home, went and served my country for 3 years. I went to the United States Army, and I was an infantry medic. And so I was attached to an infantry unit, but I was more on the medical side. I was basically the lifesaver, or the EMT, so to speak. I did that for 3 years and came back to Florida. Wanted to go into that medical field, right? Because I loved it. It was exciting for me, but the state of Florida wouldn't recognize my training. So I did what I knew I could do. I went back to that business, and I went back to that company, and sure enough, my job was still there. It was still waiting for me, and they put me back to work, and I started kind of, doing a little better. I wound up getting full time with that company, and because it was a part time initially, I wound up getting full time, and then all these connections just kept bubbling up, right? It was an assistant manager here and a store manager there that would tell me, hey, you could do more. You could do more.
Absolutely.
And so the bug bit me. I started getting more serious about my career, about my journey. I wound up getting married in 1993 to my beautiful wife. and I started moving up into the management role.
Okay.
And you talk about even more connections. I just believe that every platform that you get to, there's the platform's larger, the opportunities are larger.
Yes.
Sometimes difficulties are larger, but then the connections that you have are even larger, right?
Yes.
And it just it just catapulted me to stay connected, to also be a connector.
Yes.
And move up through the ranks to what I do today. And so I've had the opportunity to supervise quite a large business unit, if you will,
Yes.
of folks with the same company. And now I can look back and say that I've been with that company for 38 years.
38 years.
It's amazing. Yeah.
It's amazing because sometimes the vision that we have and we want to do for our life, which is good, but God pushes, he just blows us where he wants us to be because we don't see it. We can, he can show us the visions and stuff and we're like, man, and we can't quite make it out.
Right.
But he puts us right where we need to be. We just have to be willing to bend and move how he wants us to move.
Yeah, and we don't see that. You
Yes.
know, we don't always see it because life keeps us so busy with lifing. You know, that's what the young people use these days. You know, lifing.
Yes.
And it keeps us so busy with all the distractions and the obstacles and the yeses and the nos. And so when we're that busy, we don't always hear or see the type of connections or the bridges, that God wants us to cross or that God wants us to come in contact with.
What's funny is some of the greats, I consider both of us part of the greats. We share a similar story, and I was raised with a single mom with five children.
Wow.
So it's amazing that how strong my wife is is pretty strong, but I don't know if women per se are built like the women from back in the day.
Oh man.
Because it's like wow, that's because I didn't know that. I've known you all of this time, and I didn't know that you also was raised with a single mom.
Oh yeah.
They got divorced, and it was 5 of y'all.
Yeah.
It was 5 of us.
Yeah. Wow.
And so
I didn't know that.
so when you put the pieces to the puzzle, and I think it's like you never give up.
Yeah.
I don't like to be told no. If they say, well, you can't come in this door, my mindset is I'm going to build my own door, or I'm going to continue to move forward. They're like, oh,
Absolutely.
that promotion passed me up, so there's no need to quit. What do I need to do to get better?
Yeah.
And that seems like what I'm hearing from you is like you kept moving, and now you're in a place where God has been able to bless you financially, and use you for His glory. Even though in the beginning, he's like, well, I want to go in this field, but God already had that connection sitting there waiting for you because he saw down the road where He can use you best at.
He did, and if I may, I'm always certainly thanking God for the opportunity because He's first, and I don't take that for granted. And while I don't have permission to use their names, I can use some initials of the folks that meant the world to me, that really gave those good connections. And one was the very first person that I didn't even know. I didn't even know this person until 30 years later, right? My mom had knew this person. She knew the manager of the company that I started with. She knew him, and he had said, when your boys turn 16, we're gonna give him a job. Well, he was gone by the time I turned 16. He had moved on to another part of the company, and it was just amazing, And so when I think of him, MM. He was someone that, again, I didn't know at the time, but because my mom name dropped, which is single parents, they have to do unthinkable sometimes.
Yeah,
and she
absolutely.
name dropped, and MM was there for me, JM, but we called him Mr. But he was there, and I got a chance to thank him 30 years later at a formal introduction, not even having known who he was. Fast forward a few years later. There was another person in my life, TB, and he was very tough. He was a very tough leader, but for some reason, he always gravitated towards me. And for some reason, I gravitated towards him. Then it was a GB, and then it was an RP. So all of these men found a way to really connect with me when I had no idea on what they were doing to impact my future. And they planted seeds, and I think this is important. This is important for all your listeners too. They planted seeds in me to be able to go and plant seeds to other people. And I think that's how the kingdom of God grows. I think that's how culture grows.
Yes.
I think that's how we grow, and then that's how we help other people grow.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So going back to part of the beginning, you said you had low self-esteem.
Oh, yeah.
As your friend for a long time, I don't see that. In fact, I was on Facebook the other day, and I just happened to see this clip, this video from the Tampa Bay Rays game, and you were singing the national anthem. That don't sound like somebody that's shy no more. It don't sound like you have a low self-esteem no more, man. So tell us, how did you get this gig? And I know you've been doing it for a while, and I kind of forgot that you sing at the Rays. You're one of the people that sings the national anthem at the Rays game. So tell us about that.
So one of the, as I told you, I was in the military, and I was attached to an infantry unit. Part of being in the military, you're running cadence, or you're calling cadence. You've seen all the movies where, you're running and there's a song, your left, right, your left, and then the folks that's running repeat what you're saying or leading. There were some times when our sergeants were calling cadence and they were winded, they were getting tired. And so, we would still just be running, and then I would just kind of ask, hey, you mind if I go out and call cadence? And they were like, yeah, sure. So I did. Well, over the course of time of me calling cadence, the general of the base that I was stationed on at Fort Ord, California, he wanted to start an Army choir group.
Okay.
And this choir group was going to go out to perform for dignitaries. We performed for senators and governors and military officials and you name it. And one of the things, obviously, that we had to learn was the national anthem. And so I learned the national anthem, how to sing it correctly, to get every, all the feeling with it. And so I had a chance to perform a minor league game in California, and I chickened out.
Oh,
and
man.
I felt so bad. I beat myself up so bad for years. Even after I got out of service, for years and years, I beat myself up. And this is the truth. I prayed. I said, Lord, if you ever give me that chance to perform the national anthem again, I'm going to do it. I'm gonna use the talent that you gave me. It was probably 10 years later, and I started performing for openings at this company that I worked at, and they were like, "Where did that come from?" And little by little, I had another leader to make a connection that there was a contest that if it was a karaoke contest, and the winner of this karaoke contest would be selected to perform for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers preseason. Okay. And I took first place for the men's, and there was a first place for the ladies. And I performed a preseason game for the Buccaneers, and they were, at that time, the event coordinator was so excited, she would just call me and say, okay, here's the list of home games, and pick your game. Oh, okay. And I did that for 5 straight years with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Oh, man. Even got a chance to sit and be a talent judge for one of the years. So and then later on, I had the opportunity to do the Rays. So I can safely say I've done Tampa Bay Rays for a number of years. The Buccaneers for the 5. I did a Tampa Bay Lightning game, USF games, Little League games, and when the national conventions was in the Bay Area. I went out and performed on Clearwater Beach too. So
man,
yeah.
so that's very inspiring. Yeah. It's such a connection. And so the right connections is like when the opportunity presents itself, you don't have to go out and try to get prepared. You're already prepared, and you're already ready. It reminds me of I might have said this on the show before, like when David defeated Goliath. When that time came, he didn't have to go and get prepared. He was already ready. Right. And so I try to encourage people, and if that don't encourage people, we're gonna dig deeper into a bag of tricks. But the thing is that you was ready. You recognized when you wasn't ready, and then the opportunity, you was ready for the opportunity, and you was able to perform on the biggest stages. Like the NFL, I forgot about. I don't even remember you were performing at the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I knew about the Rays, but
largest crowd was about 68,000
like
one year, and it was just crazy, you know. So
that is such a blessing because it's from a single mom of 5 going into the military. Thank you for serving, by the way.
Thank you.
And you know, speaking of serving your country, man, I'm so excited and proud of what the United States has just done in the Olympics. I think the closing ceremony is today.
Yeah, it's fantastic.
Man, to watch the men's basketball game, the gymnastics, but back to that basketball game, the way the biggest stars performed when it counted the most.
When it counted the most.
Man, to watch Steph Curry just hit those 4 threes in a row yesterday was just like breathtaking.
Yeah.
And you know, it's funny that we can look at these people with the talents, but we possess those same talents in different areas and avenues. That's why there's so different, so many different events at the Olympics.
Yeah, you're right.
Whether it's shooting the gun, whether it's golfing, it's running track, swimming, gymnastics. I mean, the list goes on. It was water polo. It was just so many things. I'm like, wow, man. They should have a speaking contest of who could be the most motivated. I'll sign up for that.
Yeah. Well, but again, you know, when you talk about connections, all those folks had connections, whether they started at home, which most of them do, or they started in school, or they started with a mentorship or something. You know, everybody had a connection to do something. You know, that swimmer, whoever he or she is, had to have the best coach. And the best coach had to have had the best coach. Right? And they all, you know, you take the coaching experiences and then, you know, life experiences, whether good or bad or tough or not, and you mold all that together, then you're able to move your connections forward. You know, and just think about all the folks that they're going to touch. You know, I mean, they're touching people's lives, like you said, just watching TV.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. The amount of work they put in to become good. It's one thing to be like, oh, I just made it. Then it's another thing to be able to do it time and time again. Like sometimes people sometimes get the theory, oh, like, oh, I made it. They, you know, these people called me. I got the connection. I ain't got to work no more. And I was like, good luck with that.
Yeah, you're going to always be working.
I'm like, let me know how that worked out for you. Like you hear these things and you don't want to insult people at times. It's like, and so respectfully, I'm like, well, let me know how that works out. Because if you're not willing to put in the same work you put in to get you where you're at and continue to keep God first and, you know, study to sharpen your skill set to become a true professional at whatever it is that you do.
Absolutely.
It's you're selling yourself a false dream and false hope because that's not what God stands for.
That's right.
And that's not what life stands for. It's not, you have to continue to keep those right connections, be the right connections, and it helps you get to where you want to be at.
Absolutely. I think probably both of our mothers, not having known yours, but I think both of them probably established some parameters.
Yes.
Mine made it very clear to all 5 of us that you are to go out and work harder than the next person.
Yes.
And she didn't care who they were, whether they were black or white, male, female. She didn't care. Yes. She said, you are to go out and work harder than anybody. And I'll just never forget one of the, and I tell it often, and it means so much to me that I never forget. She said, if I ever come in that place of business where you're working and nobody else is working, you better be the only one working. And I was like, yes, ma'am. You know, and so I'm grateful for that because in the process of always working, you wind up saying, you know what, I can do this, and I don't have to be told to do that. You know what, I can do this, and I don't have to be told. Even dealing with the low self-esteem at that time, you know, I still wanted to make my mom proud. But on the inside, I was just trying to find me, man. I was really just trying to find me, and I'm grateful to have enlisted into the military. I didn't even want to go, but you know, someone told me that you know I was just going to be another poor black kid in the neighborhood having babies, you know, if I didn't go to the military. Yes. And I didn't want that to happen, and so I had an Army recruiter actually tell me that. And so when they told me that, you know, just low self-esteem made me go into the military. But I'm grateful for that journey. If I could find that recruiter today, I would probably shake their hand and thank them. Yes. And then let them know that, you know, what they told me that I couldn't do or that I was going to be, it was just the opposite.
Absolutely. But remember, like, we always were getting something from where we were at.
Yeah.
Like the lessons and stuff that you learned
Yeah.
from boot camp,
Mm-hmm.
from the military, the military itself, it gave you, it instilled. Like,
Yeah.
I've never served in the military, but the way I grew up and some of the life lessons that I had to learn, the yes sirs and no sirs,
Yeah.
yes ma'ams, no ma'am. People are like, well, what branch of military did you serve? I always get that all the time. Even to today, I say I didn't serve. I served in other different capacities.
Yeah.
But I remember my mom, and hers is a little different. She instilled that in us, but I remember 6, 7 years old, like clockwork. They got us the first couple of years. We didn't know what was happening. They just dropped us off up in Ocala, and we'll go in to see my great grandmother, and we'll come back, and our bags were sitting at the end of the driveway, like, what's going on the dirt road driveway?
Wow.
We had got dropped off because we had to work in the fields for the whole summer.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, they just dropped us off. No, hey, this is what you're going to be doing. We got the phone call later. You better get out there and work hard as you can to make that money. You better not let them outpick you peanuts or peas or whatever field they have y'all in for the day.
Wow.
I used to not like that, period. But I'm grateful for it.
Yeah.
Because instead of going off, playing around all summer, you know, it put a work ethic in me that's still in me today.
Absolutely.
So I'm very grateful for that.
Absolutely. When, you know, one of the things, and I'll leave you with this, you don't want to leave anyone behind, right?
Yes.
When you talk about connections, a lot of people only want to connect, especially when they're successful people. Successful people tend to only want to connect with successful people.
Yes.
When you're middle class or middle success, you tend to only want to connect with those folks that are of the same stature. And I really think leadership is opposite of that, because you can influence up, you can influence in the middle or side to side, and you can influence down.
Yes.
And I think that one of the most valuable lessons that I've learned in the military, especially when I got to boot camp, I did my basic training in Fort Knox, Kentucky, right? Okay. We had 3 hills there, and they had names: agony, misery, and heartbreak. And you had to take those hills. And they did that. One was agonizing, one was miserable, and one, when you got to it and you looked up and you just looked up and you looked, it just broke your heart. But my drill sergeant, our drill sergeant, and I was in 2nd platoon, he always would tell us, he said, men, my goal for you is to start with 42 soldiers and to finish with 42 soldiers. Yes. I'll never forget that. And when I tell you, LJ, that we were the only platoon in my unit at that time to start with 42 soldiers and to finish with 42 soldiers. And that's almost unheard of. And the reason why is because the basic training is so hard physically, it's so hard mentally. There are times when you could just be exhausted. And of course you have to pass the PT test, the physical training test. And you got to put together, you got to disassemble that weapon in so many minutes, and you got to put it back together in so many minutes, and you got to, you got all these things that you have to do, all these courses. And the last event that you have to pass before you graduate basic training is the PT test.
Yes.
And I'll never forget that when most of us had finished the run, the last portion of that PT test, there was one person that was the weakest in the platoon, but he was the most important. And I'll never forget, it was just like a movie. We all ran down to the track and ran with him to make sure that he crossed that line. I'll never forget that connection.
Yes.
And that connection has lasted with me so much to this day that I still keep in contact. And I've been out, since 1991, but I still keep in contact with many of my friends and colleagues from the military. But I'll never forget, we passed that line.
Yes.
We passed that line together.
Yes.
And you can't beat a connection like that. We're all different ethnicities, all different backgrounds, all different places, but one goal: start with 42, finish with 42. So I appreciate it.
Man, hey man, I appreciate your time today.
Absolutely.
And so the thing is, connect with the right people.
Yeah.
They don't have to be the perfect people. We're human. We're going to make mistakes. And sometimes people look for that perfect person. There's no perfect person. Stop looking.
Stop looking.
If I can give you a prescription as a doctor today, so there's like just connect. Just connect with people. You'll know the right person to connect with.
Absolutely.
You know, if you connect with people and stuff that they're doing can lead you down a dark path, or there's a chance you can go to jail or something from it. Those are not the people you want to be connected with.
Not at all.
But if the people you connected with, you see them growing, they're asking questions, and they continue to grow every time you see them. They're being positive. Them are the connections that you want.
Sure.
It's not, you know, you got family people that you can't unconnect to, but you can feed them with a long handle spoon.
Right.
But you don't have to stay connected to somebody that's not trying to grow and they have that negative impact.
That's right.
I really appreciate your time today.
Appreciate you, man.
Thank you for coming out, man.
Very, very impressed with you and your family and your business, and certainly your community effort and your philanthropy is just amazing. So keep doing what you're doing. Keep connecting.
Yes, yes. Remember to like, comment, and subscribe. We appreciate your time for watching today. You can visit us on Facebook, ljtucker.com. Don't forget my book will be out shortly. Have a great day.